My name is John Cronin, and I am coming to you today from the FATV studio in Fitchburg. And I am glad you are joining me for episode 1, season 1 of Cronin's Corner. I think that's the name we're going to go with. Stay tuned for episode 2. We'll see if that name sticks or not. But I appreciate the privilege to speak with you today. I'd like to talk a little bit about my work. My first 3 months in the Massachusetts legislature, serving as your state senator and representing the Worcester and Middlesex district, the cities of Fitchburg, Leominster, Gardner, and the 8 surrounding towns. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about COVID-19, the rollout. I'll talk about legislation that's been going on Beacon Hill. And lastly, talk a little bit about constituent services and the work that my office has been doing to serve this area and this community. Later on in the show, we're going to be joined by Larry Casassa, who is going to talk to us all about the Twin City Rail Trail project and some exciting news and updates regarding that. And later on in the show, we'll be joined by Representative Michael Kushmerek. And I think it's an exciting opportunity for us to have a conversation for y'all to hear about how we've been working together and how the delegation for North Central Mass and Fitchburg has come together and is really working to speak with one voice on behalf of all the constituents, the 160,000 people in my Senate district. So nobody at home needs to hear it from me that it has been an incredibly challenging and painful last 12 months as our communities, the Commonwealth, and our country has faced unprecedented challenges because of COVID-19. And we are going into a time where I believe there's a lot of room for optimism, but we need to stay diligent. Specifically, the vaccine has provided us all a lot of hope that we are going to return sometime very soon in the spring and summer to what we remember life used to be like. I can speak for myself. I'm looking forward to going to a restaurant and going to a show, going to the movies. All those things we took for granted. I think there's a lot of optimism to believe that very soon, if we remain diligent and get the vaccine to the people and the populations who are marginalized and need it, we're going to be able to return to normal in 2021. So I'll give a brief update on the vaccine rollout and some of the work that's going on here regionally. And I can say I'm very proud of the way that local and state partners have been working together and really going to the Baker administration and speaking with one voice on behalf of the community. And I give a lot of credit to Mayor DiNatale in Fitchburg, Steve Curry, who is the head of the Montechusett Public Health Network. Those two in particular have been working really, really hard on behalf of our region, the city of Fitchburg, and really the greater Montechusett region, which is 16 cities and towns under the Montechusett Public Health Network, which is the public health infrastructure that we have. I can tell you the delegation came together last week with the Neshoba Valley Board of Health, the North Central legislative delegation, and we had a meeting with Secretary Sutters, and we are working very hard to get a regional vaccination site located at the Kmart on the Fitchburg-Leominster line, and that's going to be a game changer for this area. The Baker administration has identified Fitchburg and Leominster as 2 of the 20 hardest hit communities in the Commonwealth by COVID-19. And we can't have an equitable distribution of the vaccine if we don't get those doses in arms in our communities and have the infrastructure set up to do that. So I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic. I'm encouraged by the way that local and state partners are working together, that we're going to be able to stand up something that's going to be really important for this region to get us back to a normal sense of life in 2021. And I expect some exciting news in the next week or two in terms of a site being able to become open and available for residents to access at the Kmart. I'll talk a little bit also about some really important work on Beacon Hill. And this week, the legislature was able to pass a bill that I'm incredibly excited about. And I think there's no better example of how the legislature is reacting to unprecedented times here in the Commonwealth to respond to people who are hurting. And I'll talk about 2 groups that this bill that we just passed is really going to help. One is working class families, and the second is our small businesses. And I'll talk about 4 things that this bill does that is really going to be a game changer. The first thing that this bill that we passed yesterday does is it creates an emergency trust fund to reimburse employers for employees who need to take sick leave due to COVID-19. And that's critical because there's so many people in our communities who have had to go to work either scared that they might have COVID-19 and are suffering the symptoms, or who cannot afford to go quarantine once they become sick because they can't afford lost wages. So the legislature has realized this problem and created an emergency fund to reimburse employers to allow employees to take sick leave if they need it due to COVID-19. The second thing it does is freeze a scheduled unemployment insurance rate hike. And a lot of small businesses didn't know this, but the unemployment insurance rate was going to spike by almost $300 per employee this month in March and April. And that would have just been a buckling force on so many of our small businesses who are really trying to do everything they can to survive, especially the last months of this pandemic. And so what the legislature did is freeze that rate hike. And so there's not an extra cost that's going to be on employers. The third thing it does is for working class families and working people who are living at wages at 200% or less of the federal poverty line. This bill provides tax relief to them. So they won't have to, if they've been collecting unemployment and they've been laid off, they're not going to have to pay state taxes on that unemployment. And again, that is critical. The people who are struggling the most, who are working people, who were laid off from jobs where they were making 200% or less of the federal poverty line, are going to get direct relief from the legislature. And then finally, and perhaps most impactfully, and the part of this that I am most proud of, is that the state moved this week to forgive PPP loans and state tax on those PPP loans. So small businesses, right, businesses with 500 employees or less, our mom and pop shops, our barber shops, our restaurants, our nail salons, they received PPP loans during this pandemic. And as long as a percentage of that PPP loan went to payroll and paying their employees and keeping their employees off our unemployment rolls, that federal grant was forgiven. But our tax code was not in line with the federal tax code. And so until this week, until the legislature acted, people were going to get a tax bill from the state at 5% of those PPP loans. And our small businesses don't have that money anymore because they've directed it to their employees. They've directed it to the costs that they've borne because of this pandemic. It's work that I'm really proud of because it is going to provide direct relief to the small businesses and working class families in the Worcester and Middlesex district and in Fitchburg specifically that need it the most. All right, I am really pleased and honored to be joined by my first guest, Larry Casassa, today. So Larry is the inaugural guest of Cronin's Corner. Again, we're not sure if that name is going to stick. We're on episode 1, season 1 right now. But Larry's got a deep background and experience in community development. He's a longtime retired employee of the city of Fitchburg, and I'm really honored to have him as my guest here today. So thanks, Larry, for joining.
My pleasure.
We're excited to have you here today to speak specifically about the Twin City Rail Trail project. So I'm wondering if you could just introduce viewers to the genesis of that project, where we're at today, and kind of what the future is going to look like and what that's going to do for the region.
Sure. While I was working for the city back in the late 90s, around 2000 or so, CSX Railroad Company, along with some of the others, had decided that they wanted to get rid of a lot of their old abandoned lines. They wanted to sell them, and at the same time, around the same time, the federal government passed what's called a rail banking law, which allowed railroad companies to abandon rail lines that they're not using anymore. So the way in which it works is if they decide to abandon a line and sell it to a community that wants to put up a trail, then that corridor gets preserved for the future in the event that there ever needs to be a rail line, which in the case of Fitchburg and Leominster would not be the case.
Probably not, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but there was this abandoned line that connected the two downtowns of the city, and if anyone's tried to ride a bicycle from Leominster to Fitchburg or vice versa,
they probably haven't made it, right? Yeah. They're probably still on Route 12 somewhere.
They're probably still on Route 12. Hopefully not roadkill, because it's just so difficult to get to the two cities on foot or bicycle. So this line made the perfect connector to enable people to do that, and also to provide a recreational outlet for people who live in the neighborhoods of Fitchburg and Leominster, because a lot of them don't have the same amenities that some of the more rural areas would have, as far as access to trails and recreation. And
absolutely, and I think, and you've had a fascinating perspective to this change, which I'm interested in. But over maybe 30 or 40 years ago, as people started shopping at malls, you saw kind of mom and pop places from maybe downtown Fitchburg and downtown Leominster on main streets really struggle, right? And now with the advent of Amazon and people online shopping, it's almost like the model is kind of flipped back again, right? And there's this energy that's pushing people back towards main streets and back towards our downtowns. And so I'm wondering, with an eye toward the ability to connect with a recreational path downtown Fitchburg and downtown Leominster, how important do you think that kind of energy and just that vision to connect the two as a destination is going to be affected by the rail trail?
We just think, I mean, it's so difficult to actually measure something like that, but you know it's going to have a very positive impact, because people make choice. People who have a choice about where they want to live, they're obviously interested in amenities in the areas that they're going to live. And if you can live in an area where you can walk out the door and go to a trail and get some exercise, jog for a couple of miles, or get on your bike and ride.
And then to River Styx and have a beer.
There are some shops to have a beer, exactly.
Right.
Then all of a sudden it becomes a much more livable community. It becomes a place where you'd really want to consider living. And we knew that in Fitchburg, at least, because the intermodal facility was located right in the downtown, that there was a unique opportunity there to create that kind of housing of choice.
Right.
And so part of our strategy over the years has been to try to encourage the development of market rate housing to some degree, because we have a reasonably high degree of affordable housing in that area, but also to have a mix of incomes and market rate housing for the commuters who use the train station, who also want to be able to have access to recreational facilities like the rail trail, like the downtown Riverfront Park that we developed a few years ago. The downtown has slowly evolved to become a place where there are quite a few things available to you if you're interested in restaurants and recreation and outlets. And with Fitchburg State University's investments on Main Street, the fact that the city recommitted to restoring City Hall, you can start to see the turnaround occurring now and the increased interest in opening up new businesses and restaurants downtown.
And I think one thing that we talk about is Fitchburg reaching a tipping point. And to me, it feels like there is so much energy that that we are right there, and we are right on the cusp of it. Whether it's the Fitchburg arts community, whether it's the renovation of City Hall, I just think it's an exciting time for the city. And as somebody who's been here for 30 years, I'd just be interested about what you believe the prospects for downtown and Main Street in the city are.
Well, I certainly think you nailed it when you were talking about reaching that critical mass, that point at which there's enough. There are enough people shopping in enough places, there's enough interest that the city starts to grow in and of itself, that people naturally want to set up shop in downtown Fitchburg. And it all of a sudden offers a whole lot more to the people who live in our area. And over the years, we've seen a lot of small successes and small failures. It's been kind of a fits and starts sort of an effort. We've gotten a couple of positive investments here and there, but those investments need to be supported by more investments. They often cannot survive as standalone.
They need to be mutually reinforced.
Exactly.
Right.
And so now we see that Fitchburg State University has taken a major role in investing in the downtown. The students are a wonderful asset. The culture that they offer is a wonderful asset. The city has made a commitment to restoring its downtown. We were able to get a number of state grants to help us beautify the lower Main Street area. We've got the rail trail coming in now. It really does seem as though we've reached that tipping point, that we're going to start seeing in the next couple of years, that there's going to be much more stable business growth and investment, and there are going to be a lot more things for people who want entertainment and want more opportunities.
Absolutely, and I think to me the marquee project is Fitchburg State saying we are going to redevelop the theater, and I think if Main Street can become a cultural destination, again, that's going to mutually reinforce everything else that is going on down there. And I am so optimistic because I believe the time is right, especially coming out of this pandemic, and I think we're at that tipping point, or we're reaching that critical mass. But can you give us just kind of a final update on the timeline for the rail trail right now? What are some challenges that lie ahead, and people who want to get involved and support the project and make sure we see it and it comes to completion in a timely fashion, how they can best get involved and support that effort?
Well, the current situation is that the first phase of the project, which was funded with both federal and state funding, is nearing its completion. And unfortunately, the first phase does not include a connection all the way to downtown Fitchburg. It ends at 4th Street in Fitchburg, in what's called the Old Patch neighborhood. That because this last little segment of the trail is so important, we of course want it to be done as soon as possible after the first phase. But we're very excited that the paving's been done. Right now, it runs as far as Carter Park and Leominster. So you can get to Leominster's downtown pretty much now, although we are hoping that we can extend the trail another half a mile or so beyond that point. And Leominster has been trying to negotiate with the railroad company about acquiring that. So we're really hopeful that we can extend it all the way to Mechanic Street in Leominster. And there are future plans that might even allow us to extend even further to connect up with the Central Mass Rail Trail, which runs, or is going to, well, it's currently, there are many segments of it open, but that would literally run through the center of Massachusetts for more than 100 miles, I believe. In any event, what we've got right now is a trail that's going to have finished paving done this spring. Then they'll be putting up the final landscaping, they'll be painting lines on it, and I believe they'll be opening it up to the public probably sometime this summer. So people will be able to enjoy it. With the hope that we will soon be following the second phase, so that when you're riding, you won't end at 3rd Street, but you'll be able to continue right on, ride on a bridge over the top of the railroad and over the river, which would be really cool.
Absolutely.
I think. People would love that.
Right.
And then you'd land in downtown Fitchburg. So if you want to have an ice cream or you want to stop someplace, you have the opportunity to do that.
The world is your oyster.
Exactly. So that's currently where we are with the trail. And for people who are interested in it, we did form a rail trail association made up of several hundred members of both Fitchburg and Leominster. We've had a tremendous response. We do have a Facebook page, and all people have to do is search the term Twin Cities Rail Trail, and they will find the association website. And they'll be able to get information on how to get involved and what the latest is on the development of the trail.
Great. So, Larry, I just want to thank you first for your 33 years of service to the city of Fitchburg, all the work you've done for our community and your capacity in community development. And I'm excited to see you out on your bike on the rail trail sometime soon, hopefully this summer. And thank you for all your work on that project, too, and for being the inaugural guest on this nascent TV show. So thank you.
I'm honored to be the first guest.
And it is my privilege today to be joined by State Representative Michael Kushmerek, who represents the city of Fitchburg and the town of Lunenburg, Precinct B. Michael, thank you for being here today with me.
Senator, thanks so much for having me. I feel it's great to actually see you in person.
I know. My eyes bleed at the end of every day from Zoom. I think you are probably on the same boat, but I am looking forward to more of this in 2021.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to less of staring at a computer screen.
I couldn't agree more.
So to get us started, we are both newly elected representatives for the region. How has your first 2.5 months been?
Oh, it's going amazing. It's going amazing. And I think, like you, I normally say, every day is a learning lesson. You learn something new. It's more like every minute you learn something new, and which is incredible to really see the region and see the district through the eyes of the stakeholders that we're meeting with. And it's also been exciting too of getting to know the members of our delegation. You and I spend a lot of time together, I feel like, on Zoom and in meetings and briefings, but I think we've had this great opportunity to really partner already, hit the ground running 10 weeks in with members across our legislative delegation from Athol to Littleton.
And I think one thing that we're in agreement to is within the delegation, across party lines, Democrat, Republican, people want to see you and me succeed, right?
Absolutely.
Because if we are successful and we're effective advocates for our region, then that makes life for their constituents better.
And what an amazing point, too. I think you go in with these preconceptions of it's going to be the Democrats working together and the Republicans working together and maybe the independent doing some of the collaboration. It's really been such a pleasant surprise to see that every member of this delegation wants us to be successful in our first term. And, our partners across the aisle, the Republican Party and Representative Whips, the independent, we're the only tripartisan delegation in the entire state. And they're all here as a support network for us. And I feel like they've been amazing in helping us to accelerate through that learning curve.
So just this morning, we were on a Zoom with local school committee members and superintendents alongside our legislative delegation, talking about education and talking about how schools are going to reopen on April 5th, what we need to do with an eye toward what the budget is going to have to look like next year. But we've also really come together as a delegation to tackle COVID-19 and especially the vaccine rollout. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that collaboration has looked like and what you believe that work and the prospects going forward are going to look like for the region?
I think never has that bi or tripartisanship been more evident, and never has that collaboration been stronger than as a result of COVID-19. And I think as we talk about regional equity and ensuring that every region, particularly North Central Massachusetts, has easy and accessible access to the vaccine and the ability to get it right here in their own backyard, it is every member of our delegation seamlessly working in tandem to accomplish this. And, it was wonderful to see that Representative Harrington, a Republican, partnering with Senator Eldridge,
who's not a Republican.
Who's not a Republican by any means. Probably the most progressive in the Senate, right? Calling a meeting with Secretary Sutters, and that was really an opportunity for us to drive the conversation about bringing a vaccine site right here to Fitchburg and Leominster, and just seeing almost a dozen legislators on the call talking about what is the best site, what has the best chances at quickly and accessibly getting a vaccination site located in our region, and then seeing everyone coalesce around one area and kind of joining in a common voice and saying, this is what we need, this is when we need it, and this is how we accomplish it.
And then how to build out that infrastructure in terms of not just the facility, but staffing and the ability to take that model and be able to scale it as we open up and more people are eligible, right? Next month, everybody in the Commonwealth is going to be eligible over 16. So I think that longer term vision, we can't just be in a day-to-day kind of fight where we're taking incoming. We need to look long and plan deep. And so that's kind of what I've taken from it too, and I'm encouraged because not just the delegation, but I mean, getting anything done, I think, is a team sport, and it requires teams of teams, right? And I give a lot of credit to Mayor DiNatale specifically, and Patrick Hare and Steve Curry at the Montechusett Public Health Network, who are responding as conditions change on the ground. And I give them a lot of credit because there's really no playbook for how to do this and for how to serve our communities and again, build out that infrastructure.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, the municipal elected officials, they don't have training in this level of, you know, they're used to responding to crises, but never a global pandemic and dealing with the implications and ramifications right here on the ground. And they've managed it expertly. And they're working in constant tandem with us, and that cooperation and communication is so crucial. And they, I feel like they wrote the playbook on this.
Sure. To pivot a little bit, I know both myself and you are looking forward to getting into the State House and getting into the House chamber and the Senate chamber for me and being just in person with our colleagues and those relationships. And I think what's good is we're going to have the opportunity to do that in 2021. I don't know when, but I think by the fall at the very latest, we should be back in session. I am very optimistic and excited about starting that work. But with an eye toward your legislation and some of your legislative priorities, I know you have been hard at work and busy drafting legislation yourself and filing it. Is there any bill that you'd like to highlight today and talk about that you're looking forward to in this session?
Absolutely. I submitted a bill around mental health parity and really ensuring that it is the care providers and the patients that determine what is the correct course of action for mental health treatment, not the insurance company. So right now, the insurance company has this huge role in being able to drive what the course of treatment is, and that's really driven by cost effectiveness and not necessarily what's best for the patient from the doctor's and the patient's standpoint. And so this is a refile of a bill that has its origins with former Senator Flanagan and Representative Higgins in Leominster, and they've brought that through. And this is something that I care deeply about, having been personally impacted by mental health care with my parents. And so for me, it's something I'm truly passionate about and excited to get to work to ensure that ultimately we as a Commonwealth are engaging in best practices across the medical community to provide the best mental health care to everyone in our region.
Absolutely. And I think substance use disorder and mental health is something that we both talked a lot about during our campaigns. And so I just thank you for your work specifically on that bill and look forward to working through on the Senate side to push some of those priorities through. As we kind of wrap up here, I'd be interested in what has surprised you most about your new job as a state rep for Fitchburg and Lunenburg?
I guess I'll go back to that same point that we began on of talking about the desire that everyone wants to see you succeed. And at every level, from our municipal partners, and Mayor Di Natale has been so incredibly helpful. Yep. You look at someone who has, he's done the job before.
He's been in the trenches for a day or two. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, he has been incredibly helpful in his entire team and across that administration, making sure that I have the resources and the knowledge that I need to be able to succeed in my role. But then again, seeing our peers, and then also looking to leadership and how approachable Speaker Mariano's office has been, as well as the Senate President's office. Everyone wants to see us succeed, and they're giving us the resources and giving us really the time that we need to accelerate again through that learning curve and make the most out of our first term.
Great. Well, Representative Kushmerek, I really look forward to working with you in the session and in the future. And I know we both are excited about the opportunities that exist right now for Fitchburg and the region at large. And just want to thank you for coming on the show today in the inaugural episode of Cronin's Corner. We were talking, I look forward to being a guest on maybe the Kushmerek Connection or, I don't know, TBD, right?
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Okay. All right. Take care. All right, and finally, to wrap up, I just want to remind everybody at home about the work that my office does, and this is the work that is the most gratifying for me, for my staff, and is the most important thing we do every day, and that is our constituent services. We have helped dozens and dozens of families and people who are struggling through our unemployment process right now. And if you are struggling to receive unemployment, please contact my office. The best way to get in touch with me is by sending me an email directly. My email is john.cronin@masenate.gov. And our office's number is 617-722-1230. Reach out to us. We will get back to you as soon as we can. But we have helped dozens and dozens of people in the district navigate the unemployment process to provide direct relief to families who are struggling to get through this pandemic. So we are there for you. Do not hesitate to reach out or refer our office to people that you know that need help. And we look forward to getting in touch with you and doing everything we can to provide assistance.